We're going to look back at the regular season and look ahead to some of what those regular season games have taught us and how they apply to the postseason, including will some of the games the Celtics lost hurt them moving forward? Jayson Tatum's minutes, Joe Mazzulla's coaching, how much can his preparation help him get past some of the things that he doesn't do well? It's all right now on the Locked On Celtics podcast.
Be ever ready. Recognize the city of champs. Boston, baby, we do what you can't. Locked on number 18, Tatum and Brown, J-team, step back. We gon' wet that and slay teams. Of course, the Celtics, who else could it be? Screaming like KG with the Larry O.B. Karalis above average, assessing the team status. Best daily pod, no cap, salary matching. Clutch like Bird the DJ, keep John on replay. Prime time, dapping up the truth on the sideline. Raining J's, how it started, raising banners, how we finished. Locked on Celtics pod, home of the winners. B.
Hey, welcome back to the Locked On Celtics podcast, right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day, and I'm here for you every single day, Monday through Friday. Bonus podcast when the Celtics play these playoff games on the weekend. I'm going to have plenty of podcasts for you, so make sure you're subscribed, whichever app you use. If it's one of the obscure ones like me, I use Pocket Casts on my phone, but you can do like the normal person, Spotify, or wherever, but this show exists everywhere. You can watch the show on YouTube, hop into the comments section, join the conversation there, and enjoy. Hope you just enjoy the podcast. If you're a new listener, welcome aboard. You regular listeners, you know I love you for continuing to listen to the show every day. I'm John Karalis. I used to play ball once upon a time. Now I cover the Boston Celtics for Boston Sports Journal. And today, we're just going to look back in the regular season. This is a good day to look back. We're recording this on Monday. The Celtics did not practice. It's kind of just this one day to take a look at some of the things that maybe were bugging us. And now that we get this 30,000-foot view, we get a chance to just, maybe we overreacted, maybe we underreacted. I don't know. We'll see. First, today's show is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Tom Westerholm is back. The underscore boys ride again. Tom, how you feeling?
I'm good, man. I'm ready to ride.
Yeah. Yeehaw! 57-win season. That's a pretty good season.
It's a good season, man.
It's
you know what's funny about this season is if you said on September 26th, yeah, they're gonna win 57 games. You would have been like, wow.
It's pretty good. Wow.
They just lost their coach. That's very impressive that they did that.
Yeah.
And then they go on that crazy stretch at the start of the season. And everybody's like, oh, this team's going to win 76 games. And then you get to the end of the season, they won 57. You're like, it was okay. It's like,
yeah. It was all right.
That was quite good. They did very well.
I find it interesting that they're doing this against the backdrop of what the Boston Bruins are doing, because the Bruins have set the record for most wins in NHL history, and they're a couple of games away from potentially setting the record for most points because NHL has a weird scoring system. But regardless, this Bruins team is right there with being indisputably, after a regular season, the best regular season team in NHL history. I feel like you can look at the Bruins from the outside, whether you're a hockey fan or not, and be like, wow, everything went right for them. It's impossible to expect a season to go that well, right? I think objectively you could look at that and be like, oh my God, they literally got everything go right. Pasternak's got 60 goals. Everything's good. New coach, doesn't matter. Nothing mattered. That, I think, is what people have wanted the Celtics season to be. And I think the reason I bring up the Bruins season is that is such an outlier.
Yeah.
That is such an outlier. I think when we can look at something like a hockey team, because I only follow just casually, you can look at that and just admit that's never how a season's going to go for a team. But when we look at it from the Celtics lens, if every game went the way most of us had hoped each game would go, that's the season that the Celtics would have had. And I just don't think it's realistic. Now that we're out of it, it's that type of season is unrealistic to expect for anybody in any season, in any team.
Yeah, of course. I mean, look, it's kind of the curse of winning, right? Like, I mean, it's like, you got all these, like, the Bruins doing this is, people are excited about it, but it's like, that, like, you're also coming off the, one of the greatest, but probably the greatest run in NFL history, right? Like,
Yeah.
with Brady over the years, like, the Red Sox have won World Series, like, recently is 2018. Like,
Mhm.
I mean, yeah, like, there's like, I don't know. Then so the backdrop of all that, then the Bruins come in, they're setting records, and it's like, yeah, the Celtics having a 57 win season. It's less, it's less like, oh wow, great job guys, and a lot more like, wow, you guys could have been 63. Why wasn't it 63? You lost those games to the
Right.
Wizards and to the Magic and to the Rock.
Yeah.
Should have been 63. You bums. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know.
I mean, you very easily, there are games you can go through their schedule, and without a doubt, they should have beaten Houston. They should
Yeah.
have beaten Washington. They should have beaten Cleveland on the Grant Williams 2 missed free throw night.
Yeah.
You can go back through and say 63 wins is not. We're not asking too much, John.
Right.
We're not asking for everything to go perfectly. All we're asking for is beat the damn Rockets, beat the damn Wizards, hit 2 free throws to seal a game. That's 3 wins right
Heck,
there. The
make 1 free throw. Send this thing to overtime for yeah.
Right.
Right. Like, yeah.
So I get it.
You
And there's a chance that we're sitting here after the Celtics lose to Milwaukee in a game 7, and all of a sudden the tone is very different. Because what's the first thing that I will bring up if they lose a game 7 in Milwaukee? That Houston game, that Wizards game, that Cavs game, you had 3 chances. They fell behind Milwaukee. They finished the season 1 game behind Milwaukee with the tiebreaker. So it's not even all of those games. Win 1 of those games. Just win 1. 58 win season would have been perfectly fine if you won 1 of those games, or don't punt that Milwaukee game, and just you could have still, you could have been in first by yourself. So I do think that while this has been a good season, there is still kind of like that loose end that we could look back on at some point and say, well, that hurt and that torpedoed the season, because a game 7, even though we don't know if the Celtics still would win a game 7 at home, Milwaukee in this fake scenario could still win on the road, but we know how it's going to go. So let's just start off, we start off with hey, it's a good season, but I will also acknowledge, okay, it could have been a better season.
Yeah. I mean, certainly. Like, but doesn't that just apply to like most good seasons that any team is, you know what I mean? Like,
sure.
Like, I mean, the Bucks have had games that they should have won, that they, wish they could have gotten back. I mean, heck, they probably wish, man, if we just hadn't lost by 40 to the Celtics, like,
Right. There's,
I mean,
yes,
every team has that besides the 2022, 2023 Boston Bruins. Like, every team has, like a few games that they wish they could have back. And I mean, honestly, I do think, like, it's funny because I like, in this hypothetical scenario where the Celtics get to a game 7 against the Bucks, it's on the road and they lose it. I honestly think I'm still going to kind of, I don't know that I'm going to be with you on that one, because I do think that, like, this team spent a lot of time resting its players. Everybody is healthy going into the postseason, and they have a high seed, right? They would be the, like, if they make it to the finals, they will have home court advantage over whoever they play in the finals.
right.
Like, to me, I really think, like, yeah, it wasn't a perfect season, but it was good enough that I'm like, yeah, like we do, and we've seen them win in Milwaukee too. That's the other thing.
Oh,
Like,
sure.
like,
Yeah.
So when you kind of put all that together, I understand that there are games they could have won here and there, but to me, it's like, I think this team realistically thinks that it can make a run to the finals, and it doesn't need home court advantage in the conference finals to do that. And I think they're right. I'm not saying they're going to beat the Bucks, but I do think they are capable of beating the Bucks. And could they have made it a little easier on themselves? Sure. But I also, they can still win. And like that's really what it comes down to.
So I'm going to ask a question here and take a break.
Yeah.
And then we'll come
Your
back.
Favorite move.
My favorite move. My favorite move. I agree with everything you just said, right? So if the top seed was never all that important anyway, because the Celtics can win anywhere, why did they play Jayson Tatum so many minutes at the beginning of the season? Why were they chasing every win that much at the beginning of the season? All right, we'll take a break here and chew on that for a second. First, let's talk about the Gametime app. Gametime sponsoring this podcast. Thank you so much. Buying tickets to your favorite events shouldn't be stressful, and you shouldn't have to know 3 months in advance, hey, I want to go to a thing. Maybe you just want to go to a game. Maybe you just want to say, hey, maybe there's a Red Sox game you want to go to. Maybe there's just a regular season game next season during the season you want to go to. You want to get these last-minute deals? Well, that's what you can get with the Gametime app. You can figure out what events are going on in your area. If you're bored one weekend and you want to go pick something up, do the Gametime app. Don't go through the other things. Forget planning months in advance. The Gametime app has deals on tickets right up to the day of the event. You can get exclusive flash deals on tickets for football, basketball, baseball, concerts, comedy, theater, more. Gametime guarantees. The Gametime guarantee means that you'll always get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Gametime gives you a credit for 110% of the difference. You can get images of your seat before you buy, so you know where you're sitting. You can buy tickets in a matter of seconds, 2 taps, you're all set. So download the Gametime app, create the account, use the promo code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Thanks for making Locked On Celtics your first listen every day. I'm sitting here. If you're watching me on YouTube, you see I got a Red Sox hat on. Red Sox season going on. Locked On Red Sox, if you're interested in that. Or if you're not a fan of the Red Sox, Locked On, whatever baseball team you like, there's a team there. Locked On Bruins. We talked about the Bruins. Sure. Locked On Bruins. Check them out. Also Locked On Patriots. All your local teams. We say your team every day. We mean it. So check out your favorite team. They have a Locked On outside of just Locked On Celtics. All right, Tom Westerholm, I asked you a very important question, and I brought it up because Brad Stevens was asked about managing Jayson Tatum's minutes. And I thought it was really interesting that he said his answer starts specifically since the All-Star break, really good. And goes on and on about, they've really worked through some stuff. But he starts off specifically since the All-Star break. Because they did play Tatum a ton of minutes. And one of my fears coming out of this regular season is Jayson Tatum going to hit a wall? You brought up in yesterday's podcast that Tatum has played one more minute than he played last year. So he's basically the exact same. Although someone in the comments did bring up like, hey, he understood that he hit the wall. He changed his diet.
Yeah.
He changed how he's preparing for games. So this is actually going to be a good test.
Yes.
If Tatum is like all the stuff that he said when we were asking, months ago, hey, Tatum's minutes going to be a concern. And he was like, hey, we have a plan and here's the plan. We'll get to see what the plan is. But if the party line at the end of the season was, hey, the second seed is fine, which I believe, by the way, it is.
Yeah. Then
why didn't you guys kind of do the slow ramp up like we all expected? 32, 33 minutes for Tatum and Brown at the beginning of the season, and then work them up to 38, 39, 40.
It's a good question. I mean, I guess the kind of the off the cuff theory that I would posit, like they were playing such good basketball, right? Like at the start of the season, like just offense that we haven't seen
Hmm.
like in like NBA history before. In the first, I almost wonder, just like, it was probably a lot of fun, right? Like, it was, like, I mean,
Sure.
like, great basketball is great. Like, it's fun to watch. It's fun to be a part of. It's fun to participate in. I'm sure it was fun to coach. And I think, I wonder if that was part of it. If it was just like, like, hey, like, we got a good thing going. Let's keep this rolling. Everybody looks healthy. Everybody's playing well. Let's keep it going. And I also do wonder. I mean, look, like, Brad Stevens kind of talked like about how the first 20 games of his tenure, his head was spinning. And then after that, it was just like you improve incrementally, kind of like every so often. And look, those were the first 20 games, the first 20, 30, 40
Sure.
games of Joe Mazzulla's head coaching career. He had a crazy learning curve that he had to try. And Brad Stevens kind of acknowledged, just like how tough that start of the season was, and how many things he was trying to manage. And when Brad was kind of going through all the things that Mazzulla had to manage, it was a good reminder, like, okay, yeah, he had, no time to prepare. He had a completely new situation, like, introduced at TD Garden for the first time. I was thinking about that today, like how Mazzulla, like, that first game at TD Garden, that must have been such a bizarre experience for a guy who was largely behind the scenes, whose
Yeah.
Division II school, if you've looked at Fairmont State's court, it looks like a high school gym, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
All
Yeah.
of a sudden, after Jayson Tatum is announced on opening night, it's the head coach of the Celtics is Joe Mazzulla, with like a
Yeah.
graphic of Joe Mazzulla.
Yeah. Yeah.
What a wild experience that must have been. And I say all that to say, like, he had a lot of stuff to learn, including a lot of like injury management and player management and health management stuff.
Mhm.
A lot of those decisions happen mid-game. Those are not things that you necessarily have automated. Those are things that kind of, yeah, you have to consciously take your star player out of the game and consciously put him back in. It's all learning. So I think it was probably partly that too, right? Like, just like Mazzulla kind of figuring things out. And that's probably why, probably one of the things that, like, yeah, since the All-Star break specifically, he, really got the hang of it a little bit.
Yeah.
That would be, those two things I think would kind of be my guess.
I think Tatum kind of, since the All-Star break, I think he understood that, all right,
That too.
I'm not getting the MVP. I
Yeah,
think
that too.
I
That
think
too.
I think he understood I'm playing a ton. I think Tatum is part of the equation here.
Yeah, no
That because Brad Stevens in earlier comments had said, "Hey, we'd like Tatum to sit." He kind of fights us on that.
Yeah.
And it's one thing for me to say, there's no fight here. Just make him inactive and there's nothing he can do about it. You are inactive. Grab your Jordan sweatsuit and sit on the sidelines or whatever. Sit in the back. Who doesn't matter. Just don't. You're not playing today. But the Celtics and NBA teams, they don't like to fight their stars on things like this. So they just say, okay, all right, let's just kind of see how it goes. Okay, if we need to later, we'll handle it later. But for now, fine. Joe Mazzulla is new, like you said, and he says, I really like to win. He said, how many times has he said this season? I really like to win. I really want to win. Coming out of the Ime Udoka stuff, to rally the team and to make sure that they were winning games, because the last thing you needed in November and December was somebody like me asking questions. When you start slow, you start, whatever it is, 500 or just above 500, and you start asking the questions about how tough has it been? Is the adjustment with the new coach, is that part of the problem? And
with that knowing nod that, like,
yeah,
is that part of the problem?
Yes, it's part of the problem.
That's
right?
part of the problem. Yes.
Yes. It's please say we wish you had Ime Udoka. No.
Repeat after me.
Yeah. But they didn't need that. They wanted, I think the team wanted to prove it wasn't Ime's coaching. We play the game. We're the reason why we went to the finals. Yeah, Ime helped, but I think players wanted to get that point across. I think Joe Mazzulla was like, we are going to win however we need to win. it's almost like November, looking back on it, was it's like you fold the season in half and you had like the beginning of the season and the end of the season carry some level of importance because they actually finished strong. The beginning of the season, I think they needed to start strong to shut up all the Ime stuff, to put the focus on the players, to take the focus away from, hey, interim head coach are you keeping Ime around because this guy might not work out? They shut all that stuff down. He became coach of the month. It was all like just a big kumbaya. So
yeah.
So I think maybe like in retrospect, it's easy to say they really leaned on Tatum and Brown, but
Yeah.
Brown missed some time, and so it doesn't feel like his minutes are as big a concern. But now we can sit back and say, you could have just taken it a little bit easier. But I don't think, if I'm being fair here, I don't think in that moment they had this level of kind of perspective. The perspective only comes at the end when you've won the 57 games,
right?
And you get to that point of like, well, maybe we could have done it a little bit differently, but if we did, this whole season might have gone a different way.
It's, marathon, like we were talking about other Boston sporting events, right? Marathon Monday's coming up, right? It's kind of like a world-class runner who didn't have a great plan for the race, right? They started a little too fast. And then the middle of the race, right? It was like December, January. It's like he kind of fell off a little bit, but they rallied and they got second. And you know what? Second place, like in the marathon, that's pretty good.
Great. It's pretty great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like, yeah, I mean, I think you could have won, but you sprinted too much at the beginning. But like, honestly, wind's in your face, your legs are feeling strong. Like, like this feels pretty good.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it's hard to blame them. I mean, especially like if the fallout from losing Ime Udoka and from the whole Ime Udoka situation was that this team got second instead of first. Okay.
Yeah.
Good job.
Yeah, it's a good perspective. That's a good way to look at it. 57 wins and the second seed. I mean, you won more games.
Right.
You won more games.
Right.
You got the second seed, to quote Joe.
And you didn't close badly. It's like if they had been hot the whole season and then they closed badly, that would be a different thing. They closed strong, pretty well.
Yeah. It just, and to quote Joe Mazzulla, the other team went on a 20-game win streak.
Right.
So it's a little bit more than that because the Celtics could have, like I've been saying, you could have held them off, but also teams don't go on that kind of heater, generally speaking, and you kind of expect them to tail off a little bit, and they just never did. And so, hey, congratulations to them.
And you still pieced them by 40. Like, it's like you still have that in your back pocket too. Like,
Yeah. All right, we'll talk more about Mazzulla. Let's talk about Mazzulla and the job that he's done and his growth. We talked a little bit about it yesterday, but that's one of the other things here that Brad Stevens talked about and has been one of the big overriding kind of storylines from the season. That is next. First, today's show also brought to you by PrizePicks Daily Fantasy, made super easy. Why is it so easy? Because it's you against the projections. They set the projections. You decide more than this projection, less than this projection. So when the playoffs come around and you can pick Jayson Tatum, they'll set a projection for his points or rebounds or assists. Pick more, pick less. If you win, boom. You can add that to your total. You pick 2 to 6 players. If you win those, you can win up to 25 times your money on any entry. You're not competing against other people. You're not competing against experts. It's you and the numbers. And you can do this with just about any sport that's out there. All the major pro sports, all the college sports, MMA, golf, European basketball, it's all there. 60 seconds or less. It's all it takes to make your entries. When you win, safe app, withdrawals, super easy, and it's currently operational in over 30 states and Canada. So download the PrizePicks app, go to prizepicks.com, sign up to play daily fantasy sports. First-time users get 100% the instant deposit match up to $100 with the promo code Locked On. So if you deposit $100, they'll give you $100. Any deposit up to $100, they'll match it. But you got to enter that promo code Locked On to sign up for that instant deposit match up to $100. So we talked a little yesterday about Joe Mazzulla's growth, and I just kind of want to touch on that again because that's going to be the biggest question, I think, heading into the playoffs for a lot of people. Is Joe Mazzulla going to be able to figure out adjustments? Is he going to be able to figure out when the other coach is doing something? Can he figure out what's going on and adjust to it? I personally, Tom, I think it's a little overrated. I think if the teams are completely evenly matched, then the coaching and who makes the right adjustments at the right time, that's going to be an issue that could come up. If there's more talent on one team than the other, maybe great coaching and on one side and poor coaching on the other can level the playing field. But are we going to see poor coaching? I don't think so. I think we're going to see fine coaching from Joe Mazzulla. It's not going to be, he's not bad at it. He's good at it. It's just he's not seasoned at it. And I don't know if the Bucks are going to be tough, but I've been saying I love the matchups that the Celtics can throw up against them. And Philly, I feel very dismissive about Philly, which I misspoke yesterday because Philly is also in the top 10 of offense and defense. I said Cleveland was the only other team, but Philly is as well. So that makes them pretty good. But I don't know. I feel like the Celtics have what it takes to beat them pretty easily. When you're in a situation like that, how bad would Mazzulla have to be and how good would the other coach have to be to make the coaching a distinct difference maker?
Yeah, and I mean, I think, I agree with you. I also think, if you're talking about kind of the degree of difficulty of your first playoffs, right? I'm sure it's very hard. Like, it's a completely different thing, right? Like in the playoffs, it's like every minute matters, right? Like every substitution, every counter to the counter to the counter to the counter that you see,
right?
All of that stuff matters, and that's where maybe somebody like an Eric Spoelstra, who's been around forever and has proven himself as a great coach in the NBA. Yeah, I mean that it makes a difference to have somebody like that around. But I think when you think about like the degree of difficulty, like Mazzulla's start to the season is harder than this, right? Like he was under a bigger microscope than this, like a brighter spotlight, even than the NBA playoffs. Like Mazzulla is not going to be the person under the spotlight here, right? It's going to be, I mean, to a small extent he will be, but I mean, it's going to be more so Jayson Tatum, more so Jaylen Brown, more so the players who are going to be out there. Like at the start of the season, every conversation about the Celtics was about Ime Udoka and was about because it was so, it was so salacious, right? It was like the national media couldn't help itself. Like, oh, like what, and here's Joe Mazzulla. Like, who knows how this is all going to happen? Like, I just think that to me, I would imagine that might've been harder than for Mazzulla, not the actual job, right? Like the actual coaching, is the playoffs are a completely different animal. But when it comes to like pressure and all that kind of stuff, and like now Mazzulla gets to just kind of do the thing that he's really good at, which is scout, which is think about basketball, which is like come up with counters, come up with plays and that kind of thing. Like Mazzulla's good at that stuff. He's been around the game for a long time. He really knows the game. He's a very bright guy. Like I think he'll be able to figure that part out. I think the learning curve to me was the hardest thing for Mazzulla this season. And, it was difficult and he learned a lot this season. And now he has the benefit of all that learning to start the playoffs. And I think that's a good thing. And a high seed. So he gets like kind of a warm up round.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I think that's a really good point that it's almost like the regular season is harder in a way because you're trying to figure out how to do the stuff that you're doing against a bunch of different teams. A bunch of different. You're not preparing as deeply for a regular season game as you are for a playoff game.
Yep.
Your opponent is much harder. It's much more difficult opponent. But they're sitting there right now. I'm sure they have two game plans.
Yep.
They have a Miami and Atlanta at least base game plan that when the Tuesday night game is over, they can say, okay, this one goes in the trash, and then this one is what we're going to build off of, and we can really start chewing on, okay, what if they do this? What if they do that? The in-game coaching kind of chess match is when someone goes off script and does something unexpected. I know that these guys are going to sit there, and if it's Miami, they're going to have all the players, all the permutations that have happened over the course of the season. They're going to go really, really in depth. They're going to be, you're going to know, hey, Jimmy Butler's going to do some weird stuff. You know, Bam Adebayo is going to make some plays. These guys, certain guys are going to make some plays. This is where we can help. This is where we can do this. This is where we can do that. These are all the little tricks that Spoelstra has done this season. These are all the little tricks that he's done historically. These types of zones, these types of things. There's so much information out there. And I think one thing that Mazzulla is really, really good at, it's consuming a lot of information and distilling it down to the important points and understanding that. I think he can read a textbook and take the information out and process it and all that stuff. The question is going to be if Spoelstra or Doc Rivers or Mike Budenholzer throws the curveball and it's like, I mean, I'm going to say something stupid here, but like, oh, you got Joel Embiid running point. You know, like, well, what are we supposed to do? But like something weird, right? Like, I don't know what the weird thing would be, but
some zone they haven't seen before from the Heat or something like that.
Something, right? A grouping that you've never seen before.
Yeah.
In a scenario you haven't seen before and go, now why would they do that? Right? You've got to figure out on the, why would they put this guy in there? Why would Udonis Haslem play in game 2 in the third quarter? Right? Like that's not something you expect at all.
Yeah.
But, you know, is it desperation? Is it working? If it's working, what do you do? You know, like, sometimes all you need to do is something stupid for the other team to be like, wait, huh? And be thrown off just enough where it's a 6-0 run.
Yeah.
And once you get a 6-0 run going, then now you're looking at momentum. Now you're looking at confidence. And if that 6-0 run turns into Max Strus hitting a couple of 3-pointers, and now it's a 12-2 run, right? Now you got to figure out, okay, what are we doing here? Okay, timeout or no timeout. Sub somebody in or don't sub somebody in. Let them roll with Haslem or whatever dumb thing that they're doing because, okay, yeah, they're plus 10 with that now, but just let these guys, I see it coming, and let them pick it apart and even this up pretty quickly, you know? So that's going to be where Mazzulla, makes or breaks anything in these games. So, but preparation wise, I'm with you. I think preparation wise, over the course of the regular season, I think it feels I feel pretty comfortable with how the Celtics can prepare for something.
Yeah, for sure. I also think like the good news for the Celtics is like, okay, so maybe not Miami because Miami has so many shooters. But I do think they have more opportunities for random dumb 6-0 runs on their roster than like other teams do, right? Like they have like Peyton Pritchard. Here comes Peyton Pritchard. Where did this 7-0 run of just like a guy hooping for 2 minutes come from? They have like Luke Cornett is tall. Why is this tall, awkward, deer-looking dude coming in here and just giving us buckets, for a second, right? Like, it's like they have all these, like, why is Grant Williams all of a sudden knocking down 3 threes in a row? Like, they have all these kind of random 6-0 runs just sitting there, just on the bench, Sam Hauser coming in and getting hot for a minute and a half, and they get him out before the other team can start picking on him. Like, if they get past, that first round, I think that whoever they're facing, they like. I do think that they will. Like, I think Mazzulla is going to be a perfectly competent coach. But I also think that like when you talk about those little weird like where did that come from? the Celtics depth means that they have a lot of opportunities for where in the world did that come from.
That is true. They definitely have a lot of where did that come from potential. And if I'll say this, I hope they don't have to use it.
Yeah.
Because usually that means if Pritchard is in the game, there's something bad has happened.
Right.
Or they're up 20 and it doesn't matter.
Right.
But if Pritchard's in there second quarter, third quarter, and it's a close game, why?
Yeah, you really don't want to break glass in case of emergency because Jaylen Brown already has a laceration on his hand. Like you do not want more broken glass.
Damn. I want to shove you like Rudy Gobert.
That was pretty good. I was all excited about that.
That was good. That was
now I'm getting punched.
Yeah, yes. By me, John Karalis. You stink, Mr. Westerholm.
I'm very slow-mo probably does describe my basketball game at this point. So
all right. This was supposed to be, this is kind of was like a regular season, postseason kind of amalgam podcast.
Yeah.
To me, the regular season, this might have been the most generic regular season.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I mean, there were hot streaks, there were cold streaks. There was a good bit. Their stars were stars, but not like so starry that you're like, oh wow, that guy was an MVP. Like,
okay, so the Ime Udoka thing happened.
Yeah.
And then
that was less than generic for sure.
Right. But then it just disappeared. They went on that run, and then they were just a good team. They were a good team the whole way.
Especially at the end of the year. That was really where it just kind of they just kind of fell into this. Not fell. They just kind of like clicked into place as a good basketball team. Like you guys are good. Good job. Like,
yeah. They had a couple of the lapses against the bad teams, but they really finished strong. I mean, I come out of this. I definitely come out of the regular season feeling great about their chances, considering where I was after the All-Star break. And I was definitely kind of like, I don't know, kind of spooked by the All-Star break. Like, oh, wait a second, don't tell me they're doing this again. But they got out of that pretty quickly. Brad did say they pulled out of stuff pretty quickly. They figured things out. And to their credit, they never let a losing streak get past 3. And they never let anything linger. Jaylen referenced this in one post game this season where he's like, we didn't let some bad games turn into a bad month. And that's true. Like even though we played at a reduced pace of what they had been at the beginning of the season, they never let any losing streak get past 3. And how many of their losses were in overtime where, I think that counts for something, not like hockey where you get a point for it,
right?
Bringing it full circle. But at the same time, I don't look back on the season and see a bunch of like flashpoint standout moments.
Yeah.
It was good start. Golden State Warriors game happened, a little bit of a lull, figure out how to win a little bit without hitting a bunch of shots, go into the All-Star break, lull after the All-Star break, finish strong. That's it. No huge, I don't know. I think in each regular season you have like something, but like last regular season, they had that Knicks loss. They had that signature that changed everything.
The energy.
And they went on, all of that stuff. They didn't have any of that stuff. This was just a steady kind of, aside from the hot start, they just, after that, it's just steady.
Yeah. And I was thinking about this earlier today too, because it one of the things that's been really weird to me is that everybody, so like everybody who like every national personality, everybody who's like prognosticating the playoffs, right? Everybody makes clear very quickly, like, hey, I would pick the Bucks. I would pick the Bucks. I would pick the Bucks. And it's like, but like, what evidence like do we have to pick the Bucks? Like, we have several years of just like the Celtics having good matchups for the Bucks and the Sixers, right?
Yeah.
Just year after year after year of them playing pretty darn well against those teams.
Yeah.
And like that, like to your point about the regular season, right? There was no moment where the Bucks looked more dominant or like against the Celtics specifically in that matchup. There was no moment where you thought, oh wow, this Bucks team has really figured something out. There was no moment where you thought, oh wow, the Sixers have really figured something out. Like unless you count, this last Joel Embiid game. But like I don't know. It's just it's been weird to me how the conversation about the Celtics. It's almost like the Celtics are just like people are just kind of sick of talking about them. Which, to your point, like they didn't have a particularly interesting regular season after their big start. It was just kind of pretty solid basketball. And to me, that suggests a team. You talked about being very confident in them, and feeling very good about them going into the playoffs. Yeah, I mean, they don't look that different than last year. The matchups look roughly the same. The opposition is like, the same good teams that they've beaten several times before. Like, I'm not saying they're for sure going to the finals, but if you're looking for a reason to feel good about the Celtics, like they've looked great against the best teams that they're likely to face. Like
33 wins against teams above 500. Best record in the NBA.
They've been really good against the good teams. They have the best net rating in the NBA. Their net rating when Robert Williams is in the game is, plus 10. Like, yeah, they got a lot of good stuff working for them. This is a good basketball team.
Yeah, I feel like the Celtics have beaten Milwaukee a lot more than they've lost to them over the past few years.
Yeah.
I mean, not to get too far ahead of ourselves, but I keep saying I like the Celtics matchups, and I mean that across the entire run that's setting up for them. Miami is the only team that I'm like, they will outperform. I think Miami has the potential to outperform the expectations of them, which means they're going to lose, but it'll take a little bit longer for the Celtics to beat them is my kind of stance on that. Hopefully I'm wrong, but I still think the Celtics beat Miami. I'm not going to go full Kendrick Perkins and be like, oh, they should be afraid of my. No, come on, get out of here with that mess. But they obviously have the matchups against Philly. That's been kind of like set. Everybody understands that. Why isn't anybody really looking at the matchup against Milwaukee? The Celtics have consistently been able to frustrate Giannis. They've consistently been able to hold him below his usual standard of play. And as I've been saying, they have Al Horford, who can play Brook Lopez off the floor. Brook Lopez is a key, like the key to their defense with their rim protection. And if you play Bobby Portis, then all you do is you take Al Horford out, you put Robert Williams in, and you say, good luck, Bobby. Deal with that. And you just play that game.
Pick and roll him with Tatum to absolute death. It's
just
over.
Crush him. Just crush him. And it's like, like Jay Crowder is going to make a difference. No, he is not. I'm sorry. He's not. Grayson Allen.
I love Jay Crowder. No, absolutely not.
That's going to be an all caps mismatch. Sorry.
Yeah.
That's, I know Milwaukee went on their big run, and I know they have Giannis, who is the best player on the floor.
Unbelievable.
Okay. And Chris Middleton and all of that. That's not going to be easy.
No.
But I still like the Celtics matchups. I like what the Celtics can do without changing anything. The Bucks will have to change fundamentally how they play defense to defend the Celtics. And that to me is meaningful.
That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying the Celtics are going to beat the Bucks. I'm not saying they're for sure going to beat the Sixers. I just think like we have a lot of evidence that they might that the matchups are great for them there. So,
all right. Yeah. Well, we still have to figure out who the first round opponent is, and that's the Tuesday night thing.
Yeah.
So I will have the podcast after Tuesday night and get deeper into that matchup, which, I mean, 5-minute podcast. Celtics will beat Miami. Oh, it's Atlanta. Oh, Celtics going to beat
2-minute podcast.
Yeah, the Celtics podcast. They're really going to beat Atlanta.
The Celtics might run their Muscala, Pritchard, Hauser lineup back out there to see if they can keep it going against Atlanta.
All right. So, Tom, thanks for hopping on, buddy.
Appreciate you, man.
We'll see you later on this week. Wow, we went long. 44 minutes. Woo. Plus Yeah, we have 45 minutes. So, hey, let's wrap this thing up. So, thanks for listening, everybody. Hope you enjoyed the podcast. Like I said, tomorrow's podcast, post-game, the Heat Hawks will know what the matchup is. We'll get into that a little bit deeper. And then later on this week, the Celtics will start practicing. We'll have a little bit more to talk about there. And game one of the first round is on Saturday at 3:30. So I'll have a post-game podcast for that as well. So make sure you're subscribed. Get this show directly to your device or watch it on YouTube. Ring the bell so you know when I drop a video. It's the number one Boston Celtics podcast in the world for a reason. So make sure you're subscribed. Make sure you're on top of it. And if you're a regular listener, love you. Thank you so much. Do me a favor. Share the podcast. Spread the word. It's playoff time, baby. So everybody needs to be listening to and watching the Locked On Celtics podcast right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.